Welcome to Localite, everybody. Today, I've got to say this right out of the chute because we're talking about knitting, and I know nothing about knitting, and also I don't only know nothing about knitting, but it's always been something that I associated with like my grandma or somebody much older than me. But Sarah Keller from Not Another Hat in Hood River is here, and she's going to talk to us about not only why it's not only for people of an older generation, but it's also for younger people, and all of just all of the stuff that you can do with knitting. So, Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. So let's just start this off with how on earth did you get involved? Because knitting, like I said, has always been something that I've associated with. As you're knitting right now and we're talking, it's something that I've always associated with older people.
Sure.
But that's not the case.
Definitely not. Knitting these days happens throughout all age groups. And the young, the old, there's a lot of 20 and 30 something knitters out there kind of fueling innovation, pattern writing, designs. It's definitely not grandma's knitting anymore.
Yeah. Well, I've been in your shop. I've seen some of the stuff that's in there, and obviously you're wearing one of the pieces that you've knitted yourself.
I just designed it.
Which doesn't look like grandma's doily or
hopefully not.
Or the I don't know, what do you call them, hot pads or whatever.
Right.
But it really started to boom in the 90s, I guess.
Yes.
And
knitting had a great resurgence beginning kind of in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And that lasted clear through the mid 2000s, about the time that I opened my shop. The peak was kind of right at its tail end. There was a lot of new technologies in the mills to make cool yarns out of fibers nobody had ever even anticipated or imagined. Before you had like wool, which is what I'm knitting with right now.
Okay.
And acrylic, which we don't talk about a whole lot because we like the natural fibers.
Yes.
And cotton.
Okay.
And beginning in the 90s, they started creating all these great new fiber blends like wool, bamboo, cotton and soy, hemp, that were available to mainstream knitters. They were being found in local yarn shops where anyone could get their hands on them at pretty decent prices.
Okay.
And in addition to that, they were creating what's called novelty yarns, which are the great textured, crazy, funky, hairy yarns in bright colors that are easy to pick up and learn quickly, knit yourself a fabulous little scarf, and be on your way. So the resurgence in knitting was fueled a lot by that scarf craze from those novelty yarns.
Okay. So if somebody was, for instance, what you're wearing, if somebody wanted to knit that and they had, a relatively, modest amount of experience, what would something like that take to knit? How much time?
I would say the average knitter, it would take maybe a week or two to knit this.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a passion for it.
You definitely do. You have to, I think, click with it. That's how I describe it a lot. When we teach new knitters, we can tell pretty quickly that they're going to click with the knitting, and they're pretty driven, and they're coming back for more and more and more, and they want to learn more and acquire more skills, etc. And those are the ones that become the lasting knitters.
And you're going to teach me
Certainly
to knit
am.
In the third segment.
I absolutely am.
And so we'll see if I click with it.
That's right.
Yeah. But the internet also has impacted knitting, and like
Definitely.
anything, the internet's impacted everything. But how has it impacted what you're doing?
The internet, I think, created a way for knitters to connect with each other that never existed before. So even if you were geographically isolated, and by that I mean even here in the Dalles could be considered geographically isolated, where up until just December there wasn't a yarn shop here, and in Hood River prior to me opening, no yarn shop. So nowhere to connect with other knitters and find a camaraderie among people who share your passion or your skill set. So if you were someone who was really becoming advanced and you had no one to bounce ideas off of, inspiration, talk about how you're stuck on some technique, the internet opened up all of that. So knit blogging became this huge trend during the resurgence of knitting, and that's, I think, what has helped to support the lasting knitters who came out of that trend, out of the knitting boom, and stayed with it. So they can connect online, they have blogs, they share their stories, their projects, even stuff that's totally unrelated to knitting. But you feel connected to each other even if you're separated by great distances.
Yeah, okay. Well, what about the stuff that you've done in like the Hood River Middle School? There was, I understand, you donated like some needles and different, I don't know if you'd call them tools or what do you...
We call them needles.
You call them needles?
But
okay.
Tools is correct also, yeah. There's a teacher, she's no longer at the middle school now. Luckily for me, she's going to be my daughter's teacher next year at May Street. But when she was at the middle school, her name's Ashley Ederle, and she thought it would be great to start a knitting elective for the kids. And she took it to the school board and they approved it. But they didn't give her a budget, so she needed some help, and we set them up with needles for all the students, and we did a yarn drive. So I put the call out for yarn donations on my store newsletter and also on my blog on the internet, and just said, if you've got any yarn that you'd like to get rid of that's sitting around that you know you're not going to use, please send it to the middle school. They could greatly use your donations. And the response was overwhelming. So people began sending yarn from within the state, all over. People were bringing it into the shop. We received packages from Hawaii, from the UK, from New York, and I mean big boxes that cost, I'm sure, a lot to ship.
Yeah.
Full of yarn. More than the Miss Ederle's classroom could really store.
That's incredible. So obviously that's a testament to the fact that there's a lot of people paying attention to this.
And the boys and girls signed up for this class. There was no question of whether it was gender appropriate for anyone to learn to knit it, and the kids were super enthused. They were knitting wristbands and swapping them between classes, and it was such a success that she was actually able to add a knitting 2 elective for the kids that wanted to go on and learn a little bit more in the next semester.
Yeah.
So it was fabulous.
That's great. Well, like I said, this is something that's completely foreign to me, but I'm excited to learn more, and we're going to continue when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. I'm just kind of out of my peripheral vision, looking and going, my goodness, I can't believe how fast she's putting that together. But we're talking about knitting right here on Localite. We'll be right back.